Good morning, classmates. Good morning, sir. This is my pre-recorded report in methods of research. First is ethnography. So let us define first what is ethnography. So ethnography, it is a type of qualitative research that involves immersing yourself in a particular community or organization to observe their behavior and interactions up close. So the other one is it is a qualitative design in which researcher describes and interprets the shared and learned patterns of values, behaviors, beliefs, and language of a culture sharing group. Ethnographic research originated in the field of anthropology, and it often involved an anthropologist living with an isolated tribal community for an extended period of time in order to understand their culture. So, for example, a researcher may live in a community in order to study or to research about their behavior, values, and others. So, ethnography may last for a year or sometimes even more. So, it is a common approach in various social science fields, not just anthropology nowadays. So, it is used not only to study distant or unfamiliar cultures, but also to study specific communities within the researcher's own society. So, for example, sometimes it's called participant observation. So, it has been used to investigate, for example, a group of basketball fans, call center workers, police officers, or even teachers. So there are two types of ethnographies. So one is the realist ethnography, then we have critical ethnography. So the realist ethnography reflects a particular stance taken by the researcher toward individuals being studied, while critical ethnography is a type of ethnographic research in which the authors advocate for the emancipation of groups marginalized in the society. The realist ethnography, the object is an objective account of the situation typically written in the third person point of view and reporting objectively on the information learned from participants at a site. The realist ethnographer narrates the study in a third person, dispassionate voice, and reports on what is observed or heard from participants. In critical ethnography, the researcher typically are politically minded individuals who seek through their research to speak out against inequality and domination, according to Carl Specken and Apple in 1992. For example, so the researcher might study schools that provide privileges to certain types of students or counseling practices that serve to overlook the needs of underrepresented groups. So we have the procedures for conducting ethnography. So first is determine if ethnography is the most appropriate design to use to study the research problem. Ethnography is appropriate if the needs are to describe how a cultural group works and to explore the belief, language, behaviors, and issues such as power, resistance, and dominance. Second, identify and locate a culture sharing group to study. So this group is one that has been together for an extended period of time so that their shared language, patterns of behavior, and attitudes have merged into a discernible pattern. Third is select cultural themes or issues to study about the group. So this involves the analysis of the culture sharing group. So themes may include such topics and socialization, learning, cognition, enculturation, domination, inequality, or child and adult development. Fourth is to study cultural concepts, determine which type of ethnography to use. Next is gather information where the group works and lives and lives. This is called field work. In the field work, gathering of types of information typically needed in an ethnography involves going to the research site, respecting the daily lives of individuals at the site. So, collecting a wide variety of materials. So, it means you are going to go to the site exactly. Then we have forge a working set of rules or patterns as the final product of the analysis. This final product is a holistic cultural portrait of the group that incorporates the views of the participants. So it is called EMIC. Then as well as the views of the researcher. So it's called ethic. So we have ethnographic analysis and representation. So first is description, analysis, and interpretation. So description, so this is the foundation upon which qualitative research is built. So the researcher may become storyteller, inviting the reader to see through your eyes what you have seen. So in analysis, this is a sorting procedure wherein the quantitative side of qualitative research, and this involves highlighting specific material introduced in the descriptive phase or displaying findings through tables, charts, diagrams, and figures. While in the interpretation, this is data transformation. This is a data transformation step. So according to Walcott in 1994, so the researcher goes beyond the database and proves what is to be made of them. And we have the structure of ethnography. The first is the overall rhetorical structure. So, in the rhetorical structure, we have the alternative forms of ethnography. First, the realist tale, confessional tale, and the impressional tale. In the realist tale, the reports that provide direct matter of fact portraits of study cultures without much information about how the ethnographers produce the portraits. So this type of tale, the writer uses an impersonal point of view conveying a scientific and objective perspective. In confessional tale takes the opposite approach, and the researcher focuses more on his or her fieldwork experiences than on the culture. While in the impressionistic tale, so it is a personalized account of fieldwork case in dramatic form, according to Van Manen in 1998, page 7. So, it has elements of both realist and confessional writing, and it presents a compelling and persuasive story. So, the second structure is the embedded rhetorical structure. So in the embedded rhetorical structures, ethnographers are embedded rhetorical devices such as figures of speech or tropes. So it is according to Hammersley and Atkinson in 1995. So for example, metaphors are used. So it provides visual and spatial images or dramatical characterizations of social actions as theater. So another one is the synecdoches, in which ethnographers present examples, illustrations, cases, and or vignettes that form part but stand for the whole. So what are the criteria for good ethnography? So we have here a few of the criteria of Okay, the first one is clear identification of culture sharing group. So the culture sharing group must be identified first, so that before conducting an ethnography, you have to identify first what to study, or the culture sharing group, because it is very important to identify first. Otherwise, it may result in other study. The second, the specification of a cultural themes that will be examined in light of this culture sharing group. So after the identification, you have to specify what are the cultural themes to be examined. So third, we have a detailed description of the cultural group. Then themes that derive from understanding of the cultural group. And we have the identification of issues that arose in the field that reflect on the relationship between the researcher and the participants. So it means you have to anticipate the issues that may arise in the conduct of the study. So we have the explanation overall of how the culture sharing group works, and a self-disclosure and reflexivity by the researcher about her or his position in the research. So what are the challenges in conducting ethnography? First is time to collect data is extensive, involving prolonged time in the field. So ethnography is a time-consuming method, and it takes a long time to conduct a study. So this a long-term immersion can be challenging and requires careful planning. So second, the narratives are written in a literary, almost storytelling approach that may limit the audience for the work and may be challenging for authors accustomed to traditional approaches to writing social and human science research. So the narratives of the study is like a literary work. So it's very long. And we have there is a possibility that the researcher will be unable to complete the study or to be compromised in the study. So ethnographic research can be risky and might result to a researcher bias. So writing an ethnography involves subjective interpretation, and it can be difficult to maintain the necessary distance to analyze a group that you are embedded in. But there are also often ethical consideration to take account. So that is one of the issue. For example, about how your role is disclosed to members of the group, or about observing and reporting sensitive information. But however, if there are disadvantages or challenges, there are also advantages of conducting ethnography. So the main advantage of ethnography is that it gives the researcher direct access to the culture and practices of a group. So it is a useful approach for learning firsthand about the behavior and interaction of people within a particular context. So you are immersed in a social environment, so you may have access to more authentic information and spontaneously observe dynamics that you could not have found out about simply by asking. So another one, ethnography is also open and flexible method. So rather than aiming to verify a general theory or test a hypothesis, it aims to offer a rich narrative account of a specific culture, allowing you to explore many different aspects of the group and setting. So this is my reference, and this is the end of the first pre-recorded video.